and welcome to Sounding Board, a community access television production of Seroptimus International of Novato. My name is Madeline Peters, and I'm the moderator for this show today. And my guest today is my esteemed colleague, Mohammed El Majdoubi, who is an associate professor of neuroscience at Dominican University in California, which is located in San Rafael. But first, before we begin our conversation, a little bit about Seroptimus. Seroptimus is an international organization focusing on advancing the lives of women and girls, both locally and globally. Dr. Majdoubi, thank you so much for having a chance to taking time to be here. As always in the past, it's been a delight having you and learning from you, whether it was on campus when I was part of the faculty or now as part of the community. So the topic today, I forgot to mention that, my brain made me do it. And I'm going to ask you if you want to share a little bit more about yourself, that's fine. But then we're just going to have a conversation about your topic, which is fascinating and helping the general population understand a little bit more about how the brain works.
Well, thank you so much, Madeline. It's always a pleasure to be here, and it's always a pleasure to talk with you, and I'm always ready to come here, you know, at first notice.
I'll sign you up for a series.
I'll take that. So I'm associate professor of neuroscience at Dominican University, and one of my favorite topics, which is what I choose to talk about today, is what we call my brain made me do it, or the myth of free will. And it's always interesting because my students always, whenever it's a lab, I do it in a lab and I do it in a series of different topics that we do, and we talk about them, we discuss them. But it's almost like it's a life-changing event for my students to learn about how we make decisions and what's nature and what's a choice and how we actually make choice. Are we responsible for everything we do? Are we in control? Are we driving, the boats? And it also has an implication on their own life. It's those topics where they go and they talk to their parents and they talk to their friends, and they came back and they mentioned the conversation. So it's conversation triggering kind of topics, and it's a recent kind of topic because these are decision making, for instance. This is not a topic we would understand, we could actually talk about before the invention of imaging technologies like the functional MRI.
So we can actually have pictures of the brain and learn the patterns of the brain and normal brain versus other things that may be impacting.
Because as a matter of fact, before, the only way we had to learn about the specific functions of the brain, it's either you have to open the skull and put electrodes and record what happened to the patient who needs to be conscious, or we look at traumatic events, someone who lost a part of the brain and what happened to them. And one of the most known cases is the case of a gentleman called Phineas Gage.
Yes, I remember.
Phineas Gage is a very, very famous medical case. So he's this worker, he used to work in the railways, and in 1848 in Maine. And he was manipulating this, he has a road that he could use to trigger the explosives to make ways for the rails. And one day, somehow, a mistake was done in the way the dynamite was covered. And so when he did trigger the explosion, the road went through his eye and came up off the top of his brain.
So it actually, there was a piece of metal that
it's actually
a pipe, like almost a pipe.
It's almost like a 3-foot pipe that went underneath his eye and came out from the top of his brain, his skull, in an area called the prefrontal cortex. And what was fascinating is that he did not even faint.
Really?
At the time, he did not faint, and even the doctor on site when he came, he did not realize what was going on other than the bleeding part of the eye. Until he realized that there is a big hole in the skull of this Phineas Gage. And so he survived. He did not die, he survived. But what happened is that later on, Phineas was not the same anymore. He used to be this wise, friendly, um, very moral. He turned into just an insane person. He was cursing, he was running naked in the town, gambling and doing everything that you would starting fight was on impulse.
Right.
And he knew what he was doing, he just didn't care anymore.
So something had happened as a result of that accident, piercing his brain, that caused a change in behavior.
Change in behavior, and exactly. So that's the first case in which behavior has changed as a result of a modification of a part of the brain. That's the first time we start talking about, at the time, you know, that we are your brain. Now we know, actually, that it's easy to look at it, that any changes in the brain, be it a tumor, be it a shot of vodka, can actually change your behavior. It's just, you know, it's there. Mm-hmm. So our behavior depends on our brain, how it is doing, what's in it, but also the surrounding environment at the time. You know, we all find ourselves sometimes yelling and think, you know, am I insane? Mm-hmm. And sometimes we're cool. Mm-hmm. Hopefully, most of the time, cool.
We're rational
but
behavior.
the rational behavior. So that's how we always thought about it, and this is where the concept of the mind. So, and the fact that MRI, to come back to this functional MRI, now allows us to actually put a brain under a scanner and have it being watched as it behaves. So what you're looking at is what part of the brain is active at the time when you're doing, making decisions, looking at pictures, dreaming if that's the subject of the study. And so now we have more ways to look under the hood, inside the brain, without having to open it. And therefore we can study most of the things that we can study, especially things that have to do with cognition, things that you cannot study in animal subjects or in unconscious subjects. And that's where now we know a lot about free will. And it has been challenged to a point where, according to neuroscience, we actually do not have free will.
We do not have free will.
We do not have free will. Mm-hmm. So it has been challenged to a point, data is accumulating every day. And the first experiment that I've shown, actually, that how we make decisions was done in the 90s. So a subject was put under an MRI, and she was asked, several of them actually, students, to decide to move her or his finger, depending on the subject. And then we look at the brain, and the person also had to push a button when she decided to do the movement. So we have to, it's the intent and then the execution of a movement. And when the researcher at the time looked at the data, they found out that the brain has decided to do that movement intended before even the person was aware that she made the decision. Mm-hmm. And this signal came from deeper in our brain, a part that's subconscious, mm-hmm. which indicate that before we make decisions, we actually get a flow of suggestions from our subconscious brain. And most of the time, we don't even have to think about it. We just go with the flow, except if there is some kind of conflict. What your subconscious is asking you to do interferes with what you would like to do. So an example, and that's what shows you that our brain is not just this Cartesian thinking entity that always does the right thing. I'll give you a cookie or two cookies, and you're going to look at them and you would love to eat them.
Of course.
Right? That's the impulse. But then you think about it and say, oh, but tomorrow I'm going to be fat. And then, well, maybe I'll go to the gym, and I'm not going to eat dinner that day. So who is talking here? You're actually arguing with your own self. Uh-huh. So the mind is not just one. The mind are several entities. Some of them we control, some of them we don't, some we are aware about, and some we don't. So the change is that we used to judge a mind as the thinking, and therefore every decision made was made because we thought about it and we're responsible for it. Now we know that there is a conflict in the brain, and decided, and depending on where you are, the decision might be different today than we would do it tomorrow.
So this is all challenging, that people are making thoughtful decisions and making a choice to do what someone would deem to be the right choice.
Exactly.
Okay. And this is so you're talking about food, you know.
Yeah, what do we have?
Do we have
this actually has implications in the law in
right.
terms of, you know, moral responsibility. Are we?
Well, that's how when you read about court cases, and you know, and a lot of it is looking at people's intent and awareness and intent to commit a crime,
and even the state of mind of the jurors.
Yes.
So, you know, maybe before dinner, if you go before lunch, it shows you probably will be judged negatively compared to if you came after lunch. A hungry mind is usually very aggressive.
Oh,
and a mind that just had food and is looking forward to a good nap and stuff might be a little bit more forgiving. And so this is you know, it's not just black
and white. No,
black and white.
Isn't.
And so one question that I usually ask my students is, do we choose? Do we have a free will? And they always say, yeah, of course we have a free will. You know, this is how we were taught. There is good decisions and bad decisions, and we can make a good decision and it's okay. You make a bad decision and you get punished. You know, what we call the poor judgment. He or she made a poor judgment.
Exactly.
Not everything, we cannot control everything. Some of the things we can control. I can decide to go read a book. I can choose the book. I can decide to go sleep. Doesn't mean I'm going to sleep, right? That's another one we don't control. So if you have free will about sleeping, no, make yourself sleep. And so I ask my students, okay, so you guys have free will, good. How about, can you hold your breath forever? Can you choke yourself to death just without using anything? You can't, because there are instincts of survival will stop you from doing that, will make you breathe even though you don't want to breathe. Another decision we don't make is what to eat. If I give you a choice of food, you're probably going to eat, you know, all you can eat kind of buffet. You're going to choose some of the things you're going to eat and some of you don't. If I force you to eat things that you don't like, you're probably going to gag and vomit. So we do not decide on what food to eat. Is your emotions will decide about that based on the smell of it, based on the texture, based on the color, and those are things that we decide. It's actually decided for us. And you cannot make a vegetarian suddenly eat meat, and you cannot give someone an oyster and expect them that they're going to like it the first time. It's emotions are involved in that. But it's not a huge consequence, you know, other than if you're invited to someone's place and you decide not to eat the food they prepare for you because that's not what you like to eat, right? They're going to just disappoint them. But there are some specific situations in which actually the punishment and the judgment is very detrimental to the person. Let's take another topic where we do not make a choice, and yet we actually go to jail. Addiction. So we know an addict is someone for whom the drug becomes the most important thing to get in their life.
Right.
The judgment of the common judgment about it is, well, addiction is a sin. It's someone who went and used the drugs and they got hooked on them. It's their problem. And now they are criminals because they have crack on their pockets, or they have, if they are caught basically with anything, they end up in jail. Is jail the right answer? In this case, I don't think so. So why is it? What is addiction? Why is it actually, now we know what it is, why is it not a choice? It's not that you decide on your own to wake up in the middle of the night and go to some crazy environment where you can get shot just to get a dose of methamphetamine or something like that, because one of the most addictive drugs. Well, we all know around us that some people can use any drugs and any things and they never get hooked, and others are easily what we call hooked. Easily, we call them the addictive personality.
Right.
And now studies have shown, and this is like just as of 2009, this is the first explanation of what addiction is at the level of the molecules in our brain. Our behavior in general is controlled by 3 neurotransmitters. One of them is noradrenaline.
Neuroadrenaline?
It's the fight or flight.
Okay.
If your brain secretes that, you're basically going to run away or try to fight it if you think you're strong enough. And that's what, when you see something and scares you and you jump, that's noradrenaline. Then at some point you look at it and you feel like you're silly because it's actually a stick that looks like a snake. Mm-hmm. So at that time, your brain secretes serotonin, which is a calming, tells you don't really, it's not what you think.
It's just a stick.
And suddenly it's just a stick. And suddenly we calm down, right?
Yeah.
And as a result, we can be happy. We can secrete dopamine, which makes us smile at ourselves and stuff, but then we move on with our life. Mm-hmm. The problem is, some people, there is traumatic events, either in the womb, a mom went through some major stress, or themselves during childhood went through some major abuse or stress, primes their brain to respond a lot to that noradrenaline, to the point where serotonin cannot calm you. So those are the people that, if I look at the stick and I feel it's a snake, I'm going to be scared all day, which we call anxiety, right? Mm-hmm. This is what, that long-term fear. Something is going to fall on my head. I'm going to die anytime. And in that case, it's the system serotonin to noradrenaline, which is a linked system, becomes unlinked. So that trauma makes it that serotonin is not calming enough, cannot calm you. When you're in fear, you can never experience pleasure. There's no pleasure that we can experience under fear. Mm-hmm. And so those people are the ones that if one day they use any substance that make them feel pleasure despite the fear they're living in, that becomes like, they have never experienced something like that. That becomes the most important thing they will get. Because now it's the pleasure is what keeps us alive.
Well, it's the reason for their existence.
Exactly.
Everything else doesn't count. It's like, how do I get to that state again?
How do I get to that happiness and that pleasure that I've never experienced naturally and I will never experience naturally? It's through the drug. Not just drugs. It could be anything. It could be alcohol is a drug, caffeine is a drug, sugar, it could be gambling, it could be gaming, it could be shopping. Anything that brings you, and mostly something that you do get exogenously. A drug is has more impact on your brain than actually gambling, right? Mm-hmm. And so those people, once they try the drug, they will never live without it because they actually will die.
Rather than live without it.
Mm-hmm. And what we do is we get them and take them to jail.
So we
make them even more miserable.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, who gets that? Actually, the people living in poor areas, more likely to be subject to a traumatic event in their childhood.
Right.
And those are, African Americans, 10% of the population outside, and 30% of, actually most of black men live in jail. Because it's an environment in which they live that's most likely they have seen someone shot, the police, right. It's amazing. So that's one thing in which we do not make the choice, and yet we're punished because we associate drugs with sin. And so this person is making poor judgment. Another one that actually can be even worse is who we are attracted to. It's called sexual orientation. Mm-hmm. We basically do not choose who we're going to be attracted to. There is the biology, and so this is one of those controversial topics in which is homosexuality a choice or is it actually nature? And that's the one where we cannot actually, the decision cannot be changed. If we had it as a choice, you could ask someone to change their sexual orientation and it would be very easy for them to do it. A homosexual can become heterosexual and a heterosexual can become a homosexual. They cannot even do it for 5 minutes, let alone for life. Yet, we talk about rehabilitating, we talk about punishment, we talk about jailing, we talk about the prejudice against. Biology have shown that homosexuality, and now it's actually featured in a documentary by National Geographic called In the Womb, where they studied twins. And so in some cases, identical twins can be born, one of them can be heterosexual, another one can be homosexual. So if it was genetic, both of them will be. But what is it that makes one go one way, another go another way? Now we know it's actually testosterone in the womb. So we are wired to be attracted to the same sex or the opposite sex at the age of 3 months, actually 3 months in
In vitro.
utero. So you're still in the womb. And that's what we call the epigenetics. So both identical twins have the same genes, but testosterone might impact one but not the other.
Right.
So it's the effect of environment on the genome. And so in which case, when you are, let's say a male, you're male because you have a Y chromosome. That's what we call a male. A male is someone, even in an embryo, before even their genitalia is differentiated, you can look at it in their cells. And if you have an XX, you're a female. If you have an XY, you're a male. So imagine you have an embryo that's an XY. Doesn't mean that that person is going to be a boy, even though it's a male. Because a gender is determined by your brain, not your body. And testosterone wires the brain to stay as a female, because we actually start as a female by default, and that's why as a boy I have nipples that were there in case I become a female, and I can still have breasts, and we are all equipped to have breasts and everything. Just in my case, testosterone inhibits the growth of my breast. So in the 3rd month, there is a secretion of testosterone which wires your brain to become a man, and that goes with your sex, which is a male. So male, man, good for you. But in some cases, the testosterone actually is not secreted, or it's secreted at the wrong time and not the right amount. And so your brain actually stays by default as a female. And you're born now as a male. But you're a girl in your brain. And for a girl brain, she's going to be attracted to another man. In our case, we're looking at them from the outside. That man is attracted to another man. Oh my God. It's the brain sex. The sex is in your brain. That's who you're attracted to or not. And actually, studies was done in the 1990s have shown that the brain of a homosexual male looks more like a brain of a heterosexual woman in terms of anatomy of the hypothalamus, in terms of the number of neurons. It's actually one of the few nuclei in our brain that are different in males and females, to the point we call it the sexually dimorphic nucleus of the hypothalamus. It has a name. And that's what makes the difference between males and females. You know, when we think about the brain of males and females, the only difference between the two in terms of intellect is that the male brain does not ovulate, or does not trigger an ovulation in response to estrogen. A male of a female can actually trigger try to trigger an ovulation as a response to estrogen. And that's what we call it now. We call it the estrogen challenge. That's the only way you can know if someone is wired as a male, and then we call it a boy, or is wired as a female, and we call it a girl. But that does not have anything to do with the body.
Right.
And so it's set for you. You're not going to be attracted to it. You're going to be attracted to the opposite sex of your gender, not your sex. And this is not yet been understood. So we take them, we jail them, we stop them from marrying each other. And
there are all these social norms that decisions that are made without necessarily the understanding of the fact that these are not free choice decisions.
Exactly. That's what I said by the free will.
Free will.
We don't have the free will at every level.
Well, it's fascinating to hear you talk and your examples in terms of the examples as you've provided, and also the background, the science studies that are emerging. Where do we go with this? You know, it's like you and I need to schedule more than one show to explore this area. But what happens? What happens then? Where do we go with this information now that you make the case for the decisions within the context of the brain that don't have anything to do with free will? Some things are embedded deeper within our brain structure than maybe normally people understand.
Well, that's actually what the blessing of education is, that we have to educate each other and ourselves regarding things that's okay. We did not understand them in 1960s, but now there is science that shows what's going on. So we have to change, maybe at the level even of the courts of law. How do we decide someone is responsible for what they did or not? So far, we had only one option, is that you can claim insanity, and that insanity can get you out of trouble. But now you don't have to go that deep. Insanity can be anything. It can be the fact that this is not my choice. I did not do this because I wanted to do it. This is what my brain made me do it. And we should stop thinking that jail is actually this jail is the solution to everything. We use it as a mental institution. We use it as a rehabilitation. But nothing is done there. We don't rehabilitate. We don't treat those people. We put them basically under the rug.
Yeah.
Countries like Norway, Denmark, Sweden, they actually changed completely the system. They make it rehabilitation based. You learn an education that you would never have learned outside. True. You learn a job. You learn how to live with a community, because those are the people that are going to come back and become your neighbor. However long you put them in jail, one day they will be released. And those people, if you put them in jail, you made them worse than they were. We can talk about someone who stole something, a shoplifting, something very
minor.
Someone who has pot in their pockets, and you live in Texas, end up with 10 years, and you will learn worse things. We have to challenge the way this country jails more people than any other country in the world. Actually, the lowest is Japan. But we are way, way, way ahead. We're so Russia is second. Do you want to be in the same category with
Russia?
With a country like Russia? So this is a new neurolaw. It's a new field in which a lot of research is being done. The most known being done in University of Texas. Someone called David Eagleman, and he actually really is heading the research in this field very courageously, as a matter of fact. And now we get into a level where we need to have a neuroscientist in the court, so they can give a context to both the people that are being judged and the people that are judging.
Well, you realize, as one realizes too, that the decisions that are made through the legal system, well, as you said, incarceration, and then you've got rehabilitation does not necessarily happen during jail time, and then these people are released with, as you said, maybe worse problems than they initially were charged with. But there's no rehabilitation, and there's no real understanding of all the different things that impact on a person's decision making. Well, Mohammed, we are out of time. You've certainly created quite a context for understanding the brain and how one makes decisions. Could I ask you, you've talked about a lot of things, is there one thing that you would leave our audience with, and then promise me that you'll come back and we'll continue this conversation?
We have to be open-minded. We have to stop judging in black and white ways. That's not how the brain functions. That's not how our behavior functions. Our institutions are behind in terms of science, have moved so far away. We're still using the same way we actually were doing in medieval time. Jail is the only solution we have. You're not behaving according to the norm, therefore you're basically dysfunctional and we have to get rid of you. In French we say, throw the truth or the natural off the door and they will come back flying through the window. Mm-hmm. You can't get rid of someone's nature. You can jail them, you can beat them up, they will come back. And so it's time to actually get to the point where let's put the science to work. Let's apply the science and let's learn about behaviors and let's move on to the 21st century. We cannot fix problems of the 21st century with the problems of 700 BC techniques. And so it all comes to education. We have to open our minds and we have to get educated. Education, unfortunately, education is losing a little bit the buzz. Some people are now thinking about school being worthless. College is not worth it. Our president thinks that he is successful, although he never opened a book. But those are not examples that we would like. And you can see a little bit how things are going anyways. Yes. The more a person is closed to new knowledge and in swimming in their, marinating in their self-righteousness, the worse it's going to be for anybody that is actually under the authority of such people. So let's reopen the classes, let's reinvest in our education, let's make education available and accessible to everybody. And that's basically a rehabilitation before even the crime happened, because the more educated, the more you actually become you understanding of your environments, but also understanding of how you make decisions yourself, and can maybe make you not do anything under impulse that you will regret the next day.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it is. Neuroscience neuroscience is the light now. It's like the big moon in a dark night, and let's not ignore it.
Thank you. Well, thank you for educating me and educating our viewing audience, and I really appreciate how you present information and share all of your research and your match of the hard and soft sciences in your very eloquent way. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the members of the Novato Community Television Studio who worked very hard to put this together, the director of Sounding Board, Freda Kaplan. I'd also like to thank our guest, Dr. Mohammed El Majdoubi. Again, my name is Madeline Peters. This is Sounding Board, a production of Seroptimus International of Novato. Thank you very much.